Okay, so thank you, everyone. I'm speaking today on behalf of Fightback. We're a Marxist organization of workers and youth across Canada. I'm also speaking as a Ukrainian Canadian, and I'm really glad this rally is happening, so thank you to the organizers. You know, the disastrous role that NATO has played ramping up to this crisis is being swept under the rug, and we need to counteract that. And of course we're against the war, of course we're against Putin and his invasion, but saying we're against Putin is only half of the story. The other half is the role that the Western powers have played. You know, the fact that NATO has been pushing further and further east, going right up to Russia's doorstep. Are we supposed to think that Putin's reaction is a surprise? No, political analysts have been saying this would be happening for years. And NATO powers knew what they were doing, antagonizing Russia. And they left Ukraine to deal with the consequences. No, Western powers, Ottawa, they don't have a problem with violating international law or disregarding the sovereignty of nations. The problem they have is that another power, a competitor, is doing the exact same thing that they've always done. But one thing that I've heard a lot of these past couple of weeks is, you know, people saying, well, we have to do something. That we can criticize NATO for all the bad things they've done in the past, but isn't it good that they care now? People say, well, we need to stop Putin, so our governments need to intervene. But the thing is, our governments, Ottawa, they don't care about Ukrainians. They don't care about democracy. Otherwise, the Canadian embassy wouldn't have been actively involved in the Euromaidan coup.
Right on. Yeah.
They don't care about the dignity or safety of Ukrainians. Otherwise, they wouldn't be funding and training Nazis.
Right.
They're using the suffering of Ukrainians to prop up Western imperialism. You know, we see the bombed out shells of apartment buildings. We see the streams of refugees. We hear about friends and family who are, you know, terrified and suffering. And it's all heartbreaking. But the politicians in Ottawa, they don't care. The ones who actually care about Ukrainians are the average working people around the world, including those in Russia, who have shown a tremendous outpouring of sympathy and solidarity.
Yeah.
So what do we do if we can't support NATO, if we can't count on NATO to do the right thing because it's not in their interests? So the Marxist answer, the communist answer to the question, what do we do, is that we do not take the side of Putin, we do not take the side of NATO, but we do take a side. We take the side of the working class. We need to look at why wars happen. Whatever heads of state say, wars are not fought over principles like democracy and international law. They're fought because of competition over resources, markets, spheres of influence, and strategic positions. The US and its allies have slipped in recent years. They've shown weakness in Afghanistan and Syria. And the Russian ruling class sees an opportunity. That's why this is happening. Because of the competition of imperialist powers. And what is imperialism but capitalism at its most ruthless and most rotten? No, Ukraine is one of the few secure markets that Russia has, so why would the Russian ruling class give that up? And for Western capitalists, if they can keep Russia hemmed in, that gives them more room to expand. The capitalists are our enemy wherever they come from. For them, this conflict isn't about democracy or independence. It's about who gets to profit off the privatization of the Ukrainian economy, who gets to exploit cheap Ukrainian labor, who gets key military positions, whether it's Russia or NATO. The only difference between Russia and NATO is that NATO is using Ukrainians to fight this war for them. What we say is that average people, the working class, we don't share the interests of our imperialists. The only friends that workers have are each other internationally in every country.
Yes.
We, the workers, we don't benefit from war. We don't make money off of military contracts. We don't rake in millions of dollars from skyrocketing oil prices. We don't benefit from turning on each other and killing each other. The ruling class wants us to fight for their interests, for their enrichment, and we say no. We say our main enemy is at home. For Russians, their main enemy is in the Kremlin, but for us, ours is in Ottawa and on Bay Street. Woo! So, Fightback We're part of an international organization, the International Marxist Tendency. We have supporters in countries around the world, including in Russia. Our comrades in Russia are taking a stand against the war, risking arrest and violence by attending and organizing protests. They're fighting against Putin, and it's our job here to fight against NATO. So we oppose sanctions that are an act of war by economic means, and that punish average Russians far more than those in power. We oppose any attempts to escalate or prolong the conflict, whether it's sending troops or so-called lethal aid. And we stand against the absolutely disgusting Russophobia that we're seeing more and more of. You know, it starts with hearing about Russian athletes being barred from hockey or other sports, or liquor stores taking Russian vodka off the shelves, and it seems silly. But then you start hearing about Russian businesses being harassed. And yesterday, a Russian community center in Vancouver was vandalized. You know, that's where this type of thing leads. So let's be clear. The Russian people are not our enemy. No, the best friend the Ukrainians have right now are the Russians protesting the war. We don't stop wars by turning on each other. In times of war, solidarity between workers, international solidarity is more important than ever. We stop wars by stopping the cause of them, by turning on our own ruling class, those who profit from our deaths, by ending the system that depends on endless expansion and exploitation for its survival, by ending capitalism and replacing it with real democracy, with workers' democracy, with socialism. That's what Fightback and the International Marxist Tendency is working to achieve, and I hope you join us. Workers of the world unite, no war between peoples, and no peace between classes. Thank you.